It's 9 p.m. and you just finished a full dinner. 20 minutes later, you're standing in front of the pantry. Not because you're hungry, you already know that. But your hand is already inside a bag of chips. 12 minutes after that, the bag is empty. You stare at it. You don't remember deciding to finish it. This has happened before, more times than you'd like to admit. And somewhere in the back of your mind, a familiar thought arrives. Maybe you just have no self-control around food. That thought is wrong, and someone built it to feel true. There is a name for what just happened to you. It isn't a diagnosis. It isn't a personal failure. It has a name most people have never heard: hyperpalatability. It's not a theory. It's a measurable property of food. And it was engineered deliberately for decades to do exactly this. Not to feed you, to make you unable to stop. The people who built it have a name for the goal, too. They call it the Bliss Point. In nature, fat and sugar almost never occur together in the same food. A ripe fruit is mostly sugar. A nut is mostly fat. Rarely both. Your brain evolved a stop signal for exactly this kind of food. Eat enough sugar, your body says, that's enough. Stop. But walk into any store today, and that rule doesn't apply anymore. Fat and sugar together in the same bite. Fat and salt together in the same handful. This combination barely exists anywhere in nature, but it exists in almost everything on a supermarket shelf. And your ancient stop signal was never built to recognize it. So it doesn't fire. You don't feel full. You just feel like continuing. This isn't an accident of modern cooking. It's the result of one of the most quietly funded research efforts in food history. In the 1970s, a psychophysicist named Howard Moskowitz was hired by the food industry. His job wasn't nutrition, it was optimization. He was asked a simple question: what is the most craveable version of a food? For one project, a spaghetti sauce brand, he tested 45 distinct recipes, not slightly different sauces. Scientifically engineered variations in sugar, fat, and acidity. He ran them through consumer panels, city after city, for months. Statisticians expected one winning recipe to emerge. Instead, they found 3 distinct clusters of preference. One of those clusters wanted their sauce extra chunky. No focus group had ever asked for that. No one had said the word out loud. But roughly a third of people, tasting blind, reached for it every time. That discovery alone added hundreds of millions of dollars to one product line. It also changed the entire industry's approach to food, permanently. From that point on, there was no such thing as the right recipe. There was only the most statistically irresistible one for each type of person. This idea has a name now, and it comes from actual peer-reviewed research. In 2019, researcher Tara Fazzino at the University of Kansas set out to define it. She and her team analyzed over 7,000 food items sold in the United States. They were looking for one specific pattern: fat combined with sodium, or fat combined with sugar. Foods with this exact combination, they found, trigger measurably stronger eating responses. Not stronger flavor, stronger compulsion to keep eating past fullness. They called these foods officially hyperpalatable. The result of the study was the number that should concern you. 62% of the entire US food supply met the criteria. Not 62% of junk food, 62% of everything on the shelf. Bread, yogurt, granola bars marketed as health food. Foods you would never think to associate with the word engineered. The study wasn't funded by a health advocacy group. It was conducted specifically because no one inside the industry would ask the question first. Somebody outside had to go looking for what was already sitting on every shelf. Here's where it goes from clever formulation to something closer to neuroscience. Every time this fat-sugar or fat-salt combination hits your tongue, your brain releases dopamine. Not a small amount. A spike comparable to what researchers see with certain addictive substances. Neuroscientist Nora Volkov, director of the National Institute on Drug Abuse, has studied this overlap directly. Her brain scans show the same reward pathway lighting up for hyperpalatable food as for other compulsive behaviors. This is not you being weak. This is a measurable chemical event. And there's a second trick layered on top of the first one. Food scientists call it vanishing caloric density. It means a food is engineered to melt or dissolve almost instantly in your mouth. Your brain estimates fullness partly by how much chewing and time a food requires. A food that vanishes in seconds tricks your brain into logging far fewer calories than you actually ate. This is why you can finish an entire bag of something that dissolves on contact, but would never finish the same calories in a plate of rice. The gap between those two experiences isn't willpower, it's engineering. And it was never a side effect. It was, for some products, the entire design goal. By now you might assume this is one company, one bad actor, one scandal. It isn't. It's standard practice across the entire industry. Physician and former FDA Commissioner David Kessler spent years investigating exactly this. He'd already taken on the tobacco industry once, and he recognized the same pattern here. In his research, food industry insiders described their own products with a specific phrase: eating without registering fullness. Eating, in his words, past the point of biological need. These weren't accusations from outsiders. These were internal descriptions from people who built the products. There are entire departments in major food companies whose only job is craveability testing. Not taste testing, not nutrition testing. Craveability specifically as its own measured metric. Formulas are patented. Ratios are trade secrets, guarded the way a pharmaceutical formula would be. Some of these formulas took years and multiple consumer panel cycles to finalize. The goal was never printed on the package. It was never meant to be. You were never told this because knowing it would work against the product. Every time you've called yourself undisciplined at 9 p.m. in front of the pantry, this is what was actually happening. But the part that should genuinely unsettle you is where all of this actually happens. Not in a factory. Not on an assembly line, in a quiet room, usually windowless, called a sensory lab. This is where the real decisions about your hunger get made. Picture it. Late afternoon, a corporate research facility, sometime in the 1980s. A panel of paid tasters sits in individual booths, headphones on, forms in front of them. They don't know which formula is which. Everything is coded by number. In the next room, behind one-way glass, a small team watches every reaction. A raised eyebrow, a second bite taken faster than the first, a form filled out just slightly higher than average. None of this is guesswork. Every reaction is logged, scored, and fed into a formula. The scientists in that back room aren't chefs, they're statisticians. Their job is to find the exact ratio of salt, fat, and sugar that produces the strongest, most repeatable reaction. Not the best-tasting version, the most rebuyable one. When they find it, that formula gets locked. It ships to every store in the country. It doesn't get revisited for years, sometimes decades, because it already works. Somewhere, right now, a version of that exact room is running that exact process again. For a product sitting in your kitchen at this very moment. This is the system behind the 9 p.m. pantry moment you've had 100 times. It was never about deceiving you with a single lie. It was about designing an experience your biology was never equipped to resist. And it worked exactly as intended, on nearly everyone, including you. This is why just eat less has never been the advice it sounds like. It asks you to outthink a system built by statisticians, tested for decades, on exactly this weakness. You were never the only variable in that equation. The other variable had a research budget, a sensory lab, and 40 years head start. Knowing this doesn't fix it instantly, but it changes what the problem actually is. It was never a character flaw stopping you at the pantry door. It was a very well-funded, very deliberate piece of engineering. And once you can see the engineering, it stops working on you quite the same way. So the next time you're standing at the pantry at 9 p.m., notice something. That pull you feel isn't hunger. It was never hunger. Hunger is a quiet, patient signal your body sends when it actually needs fuel. What you feel at 9 p.m. is a designed signal, built in a lab, aimed at a different target entirely. It was never aimed at nourishing you. It was aimed at your next bite. For your whole life, you thought this was a test of your willpower. It was never a test. It was a design problem, and you were never told the rules. You weren't losing to yourself in that kitchen. You were losing to a room full of statisticians who had already met you before you were born. That room is still running, but you don't have to walk into it blind anymore. The hunger was real. The shame you attached to it never had to be. You were never broken at that pantry door. You were just the last person in the room to find out there was a room at all. Now you know. And that changes everything that happens the next time you reach for the bag.